IVF Real Talk.
I'm Lucy.
And I'm Yael. Welcome back, guys. Today we're joined by Dr. Dhanushi Fernando.
Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me on, guys.
Today we're talking about how to navigate the IVF noise with Dr. Dhanushi Fernando from Monash IVF.
But before we do, we need to jump into our ChatGPT fun fact segment. So we've Googled you, we've ChatGPT'd you, so we need to check the facts to see what Chat has said. But the first one is Dr. Dhanushi is a big foodie and loves trying new restaurants and cuisines when she gets time away from work. Is this true?
How did ChatGPT know about that?
It knows everything.
I do. I do love good food, and I've just come back from a conference in China, and I can tell you every meal I had there was amazing, even food court food. So affordable, and I've discovered a new dish which was new to me, dry pot. It's like hot pot, but dry pot, and is now my favourite food.
Wow.
I feel like you and Dhanushi could have chats for hours.
I'm a big foodie.
Yeah.
I'm a big foodie. What's your favourite cuisine?
Favourite cuisine is my mum's cooking, so Sri Lankan food, just because it feels so homely.
Yeah.
Good answer.
That's good.
Yeah, so good, and you're so used to it. I just love it.
I think beats mum's cooking, right?
I was going to say, especially when you're sick.
Yeah.
You just want mum's soup.
Yes.
Or mum's curry or whatever it is.
Yeah. Anything. Yeah, I agree. Totally. So the second one that Chat's come up with is Dr. Dhanushi didn't stop at one master's. She's completed both a master's in reproductive medicine and a master's in women's health. Is this true?
It is. I'm a little bit addicted to study, and so I did 2 masters, yes. I just wanted all the information possible, so trying to soak it in. So, yes, I did.
How long does that take? How long does 2 masters take?
Oh, I can't remember how long that took me, to be honest. I just did it through my, while I was also training to be an obstetrician gynecologist. So I just did it in the background. And yeah, it was very, it was really nice extra information for my studies, and I just love soaking up all the information from different topics. So just continued.
Well, I feel like you're either good at studying or you're not.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm just not.
I'm just not. I'm just not either. But that's dedication, and then also on the job too. Yeah, that's a lot of time.
Yeah, and I love how you said just in the background.
Yeah, just on the side.
For me, just in the background is like watching a TV show or something.
For you, just in the background, I made a cake on the weekend.
Yeah.
Just in the background.
Okay, so the last one is she has been through her own fertility journey. Is that true?
That's right. So I guess as a modern day woman trying to balance it all, I did put off my fertility plans for a while I was doing all the study and exams. And I've always wanted kids. So when I had finished my career requirements, my exams, the stressful years, and I was ready, it was something that took a while for me to have my own family. And so I think that experience brings a lot of, I suppose, experience to what I do, and a different level of empathy, because I can see what people and women and families go through to make their dreams come true. So I guess, because it took a little while and I had to go through extra investigations and treatments, and it's really nice to be able to be on the other side, being able to help other families do the same.
Yeah. It's such an advantage, I feel like, and having someone that understands your emotional piece as well as the science for us is huge, right? We had someone that also went through their journey, but I think it's an advantage. So yeah,
it's funny. There's so many doctors that have come on this podcast that have been through a fertility journey.
Yeah, it is.
I feel like it's 1 in 4, maybe 1 in 3. We need to do the stats on that, but it's really high.
Yeah,
I think doctors are also guilty of trying to get through all those stressful years and putting off fertility for a long time. So I think that goes together with lots of careers, I suppose, bring those stresses and then put fertility later down the track, and then it does become a little bit more challenging. And we're not really taught those things in school. We're not taught, we're always taught how to prevent pregnancy, but not really about the importance of, timing and age when it comes to reproduction. So people just think it will happen, and it doesn't come so easily. So I think that's a challenge for the modern woman, definitely.
So true, because that just takes me back to my school days, and it was like, oh, it's so easy to fall pregnant. And when it came that time, I was a bit older, and it was definitely not so easy. So,
Speaking of careers, we'll now hand it over to you to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in the IVF space.
Look, I was always a scientist at heart. So through school, and I wanted to be in the lab. I wanted to grow up in the lab, playing with test tubes, finding new, treatments or tests to do. And I thought, a good job would be a pathologist. Growing up in the lab, and I had my heart set on that when I started medical school. And when I was in 4th year of medicine, I wanted to do some research, and I picked a doctor who was one of the pioneers at Monash IVF, one of the very senior doctors there running the show at Monash Health. His name was David Healy, and he helped me through a wonderful project on IVF outcomes back in the day. And I did my BMed Sci on it. And that experience and getting to know patient stories and their outcomes really inspired me to stay within that field instead of going down the path of pathology, because I thought, how cool is this medicine? How amazing is it that we can do these advanced techniques, research on new possibilities and treatments at this day and age. And in every other field of medicine, I feel like there is not as much hope, but with fertility treatment, there is so much hope and so many new discoveries that we're implementing so quickly. So I just love that about fertility medicine. And there is so much emotion behind fertility treatments and outcomes, and how unfair is it that a family that or a couple or a person who wants a family can't have that? I think that's such a big part of life, and I love to be involved in that. So that's why I went down the path of training in obstetrics and gynecology, and then doing some extra years as a fertility fellow to learn more about the science and the art of IVF.
I love that you mentioned the hope piece.
Yeah,
and I think that's why we love doing the podcast as well, because we get to meet with so many doctors and even talk about new technologies and what's coming up and the embryologist. And I think it's really, really special. And I think it's also very addictive, this kind of work.
Yeah.
Would you say the same thing? It's very addictive?
Yeah, very addictive, because every time there's a pregnancy, especially, it's just so it's so fulfilling, it is so amazing, and to see the happiness in that family, it's just amazing. So that drives it, it really does. And when I used to do obstetrics, delivering the baby, it was just so surreal. So that was another favourite. But I've stopped doing the obstetrics, but the IVF is really fulfilling. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, you're part of giving, us our miracle, really. So, I couldn't even think about how rewarding it would be day in, day out, even though there's definitely challenges along the way.
Long hours, weekend work,
delivering
and all of
bad news,
the bad news as well. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Should we jump into the questions?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, let's go. So the first question, why does fertility information feel so overwhelming right now?
So we're really living in an era of information abundance. And fertility used to be a conversation that happened between a patient and a doctor behind closed doors. And now there's so much information on social media. So whether it is Facebook, community groups on Facebook, TikTok, Reddit, Instagram, etc., there is a massive volume of content. And unlike most medical fields, fertility carries a huge emotional weight as well. And people are often researching while they're grieving or scared or desperate for hope. And that emotional state makes it nearly impossible to filter the signal and the good information from the noise and all the information out there that may come from experts and non-experts. And add to that the fact that IVF is really complex. Protocols differ. The responses from a person differ even from cycle to cycle, and outcomes are different. And you have a perfect storm where information feels like a moving target. And so all that noise, because of this abundance of information, can be really overwhelming, whether you have a medical background or whether you're a patient trying to navigate it.
Lucy, back to your journey, do you feel that you ever just got too overwhelmed? Because we were both in the community and we both researched on in different avenues. I was in the Facebook groups and you were on YouTube.
I would feel overwhelmed all the time.
Yeah.
I would read these things and it would scare me to my core. And I would think, oh my goodness, that's me. It's never going to happen. Yeah. Or I have this diagnosis. It hasn't worked for this person, so it's not going to work for me. Or I would read something about a medication and it would freak me out so much. I would try filter and just look for the positive things. But I feel like when you're doing that, there's going to be negative things with it.
Yeah.
Were you the same?
I think for me, I remember there was one time I put a question up and it had nothing to do with all the responses, and before you know it, I hadn't even done one cycle and I was being recommended to do donor egg, you're too old, and then I had all these people coming at me and I was like, oh my God, and I already felt old anyway, but so yeah, it really spiraled me. So I ended up sort of stepping out of the chat, but there is so much to decipher. And like you said, while you're researching, so I found my second doctor through researching, which was a blessing, but it comes with a lot of noise along the way.
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like the next question will follow what we just spoke about, but what should people be cautious of when it comes to all of the fertility advice?
So there are certain IVF trends, I suppose, that I think you should be aware of. And the ones that come to mind are the ones that maybe feel empowering when you read about it, but are actually just distracting from the treatment that needs to happen. So things like extreme supplement protocols, megadosing, cocktails of different medications and supplements being promoted by people who are not experts in the area but maybe have personal experience. And they do it without acknowledging variation and with the variation in effect on a person and the side effects and potential harm. Okay, so I see a lot of oversimplification of the supplement use and around things like new tests that are available, like immune protocols and treatments for different tests. And I think we might touch on a little bit of that later. But they are legitimate clinical tools, but they're being presented as solutions to everything. And it may be that there is evidence for that particular tool in a very tiny percentage or a very specific certain population, but you can't really just use it universally in everyone. And so I think it is something to be cautious of. So not applying what works for one person to a whole general population. And so what I tell people is just to be cautious of anything that promises certainty and be cautious of communities, as you know, however well-meaning they are, where one person's success becomes everyone's prescription, and vice versa, But yeah, just to be cautious of that because your response might be very different to another person's.
Yeah, I remember one time when I was on my journey, there was this ad that popped up for this fertility tea, and it was selling it as it was like a certainty, it was selling it as this is your success. And I got so angry because I feel like we're so vulnerable, as you know, when you're trying, when you're on the journey, and we're desperate. We are trying all these crazy things. I know I tried a lot of crazy things on my journey. I know you tried just as much, probably more actually, more crazy things than me.
Yeah.
But it just frustrated me. Someone was trying to sell this tea like it was a simple fix.
Yes.
And someone with infertility, the tea is probably going to fix no one.
Yes. Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And it was just like a raspberry tea. It wasn't even like a special Chinese medicine tea.
It didn't come with a magic wand.
No.
But also, do you remember, I would put up a post and there was always, it was like this scam response, and it didn't even read your post.
I remember that.
It didn't read, like you would put a question and it would write back, message Dr. so-and-so, he, and you'd get this doctor and the page was all a scam. Everything was a scam, but it was like guaranteed success. And I was like, I asked a question about like if the sun was rising at 5 a.m. or like something completely different, and you're just coming at me because I've got a fertility page. So, and yeah, it was hilarious. I think one time I was a little bit aggressive and I was like, this is rubbish and you're scamming people that are vulnerable.
I commented on the tea place too because I was angry. I commented. Yeah.
Don't like come at the vulnerable with your sales pitch. But yeah, there's a lot out there for sure.
I agree.
On the back of the community, there's also Dr. Google and now AI. What impact and risks come with people obviously spiraling at 2 a.m. and jumping on a chat?
Definitely a huge impact on people's mindsets from AI and from social media. So social media tends to create an unrealistic optimism, I think, in some people. And I guess it depends on the algorithm and what it feels like showing you one day versus the next. There might be unrealistic optimism one day and just really terrible stories and bad outcomes on another day. But things that, bother people a lot is, are like things like, oh, it worked for her, why not me? They're on this cocktail of things and it worked, and I'm on my, sixth cycle and it hasn't worked. Maybe I need to be on that cocktail. So that's one aspect of it. And then unrealistic fear, terrible stories and complications that happen to people, or everyone's posting about hyperstimulation and am I at risk or will I get a bad complication? So it adds all these unrealistic expectations on this medical process. And so I think that breeds a lot of unrealistic, hope, but also fear. And so I think that's quite dangerous. AI adds a different sort of complicating risk, I suppose, because sometimes people will come in having had really detailed, confident, chats with a chatbot, or even using chatbots as a psychologist for themselves, and they might have really detailed plans set forward for them, but they're very generic. They're not individualized to that person, and that chatbot doesn't have your full history. They don't know what you're going through, emotionally. It's based on information from, lots and various sources, but it's not looking at you and deciding a plan that is right for you. And
they're not a doctor.
And they're not a doctor. Yeah. And so I think the flavor of, both social media and AI is that there is confidence without context of the person, and that can be dangerous in medicine. So you really have to get to know the person, and that's why we spend so much time getting to know you and your story, and even more so when you've already been through rounds of fertility treatment and it hasn't worked. And so I think it's really important to individualize that care and not have a generic answer to everything.
Yeah. Is it quite common for patients to end up in your room with ChatGPT and AI and be like, oh, this is what AI said, or this is what, Google said,
Chat told me I need to do this protocol, so can you give it to me?
They do sometimes. So they don't say it's AI, but you can tell that it's been created for them. So it is interesting, but I always encourage questions. And if someone comes to me asking, oh, you've decided on this protocol, what about this? Then I'm more than happy to answer those questions. I think those are really good conversations to have. It's only worrying when someone says, okay, I have read about this and I definitely want this. Can you prescribe it? And they're not open to a conversation. So, talking to your specialist is really important.
That was actually my next question. When should somebody stop researching and speak to their specialist, and what's maybe like a red flag or something we can look out for?
So first of all, it's never too early to speak to your doctor about anything. But when does it become a red flag? I think when the research starts to feel like a compulsion or something that you would be doing not at that time of day. So like if you're scrolling through information at 2 a.m. when you could be sleeping, and sleep is really important for your fertility as well. When it's more than just preparation, when it starts to feel like you have to do it, or when the research is leading you down a path of fear or worry, and it's not helping you stay informed, it's just becoming overwhelming, that is a red flag. So you guys have been through, social media posts and community groups where you're posting questions. If you're looking through forum threads at night and it's making you anxious, that's when you should be having a conversation and asking those similar questions from your specialist. That's what they're there for, to answer all your questions. That's their job. And I said it's never too early to speak with your doctor. Yeah. I'd say, if you've been trying to conceive for more than 12 months, if you're younger than 35, or for more than 6 months and you're over 35, don't wait until you've done all your research. It is totally okay to go and see a doctor first, ask the questions, take away some notes and then write down questions later. It's never based on one appointment or one interaction, your plans. It's a journey that you go through together. And so let the doctors do the research. Come in with questions and come in at any time. And the consult itself will give you a better clarity around what's going on with you. And then it can maybe help you direct research into what is happening with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think a lot of us, I think the reason why we might do a lot of Google searches, and you let me know what you think, obviously our mind's ticking a lot, but also I think I didn't ever want to go in and annoy my doctor or annoy my clinic or ask a stupid question. Yeah. So I felt like I would ask people in the community or do my own research. So what would you say to someone that is maybe feeling like it's maybe a dumb question, or they don't want to annoy their fertility specialist or annoy their clinic?
I would say just ask away. That's completely our job to do. I have appointments available for when people are going through a cycle and they have questions come up. Being able to access your fertility specialist and, maybe not call after hours, but, during a consult or emailing, they're usually happy to be able to answer your questions. And different organisations have different setups, but certainly at Monash IVF, the nurses are a great source of, information as well. So if you feel like you have a question that you don't want to ask your clinician, you can always ask your nurses, and you have lots of points of interaction with them too. And then your doctor, depending on who they are, they will have spots available to see you or answer questions that come up throughout your course as well.
I think that, like you said, I think it can take patients a long while in their journey to then realise that, not to be scared and to start to advocate and to start ask questions. And it's not that the doctors don't want to answer them; it's more that we're too scared.
We're too scared to ask them.
It is good to know that, and I think I got to a point where I became what I thought was that annoying patient that would ring the nurses or ask. But I think it's really important. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think and they all appreciate it. And there was never a dumb answer. I mean, never a dumb question. Like, it was never annoying. I'd always be like, I'm sorry, I've got one more question. And they'd be like, absolutely. If you have another one, call us back. So yeah, I think it's important.
Call away. Ask away.
Yeah.
Like Dr. Fernando said, we can call up. I love this.
Yes, agreed. Okay, so the next question. What are the 3 most important things someone should consider when choosing an IVF clinic?
That's a good question. I think the first one would be transparency around success rates. So success rates depend hugely on the doctor. Like, obviously there are patient factors, but there are doctor factors and there are lab factors, and clinics are required to be open about their success rates so that as patients you can be informed about your choice. But the willingness to show you the information is itself a green flag about how a clinic operates. A lab should be very proud of their outcomes. And so I normally point people in the direction of the Australian government website, yourivfsuccess.com. And on there you can have a look at their lab success rates for each clinic. Secondly, the quality of communication and individualized care. I think that's important. IVF, as I've said before, it's not a one size fits all. So we have to be able to look at a person and give them an individualized protocol or plan, and then the communication between the members of the group in that organization have to be good. And not everybody's perfect, but you have to be able to answer questions from the patients and be able to give clear communication, clear instructions to the patient. And it's a case of when your care is being considered, you don't feel like you're a number, going through the paces, but you are an individual person with your own story and your own plan, and there's someone looking out for you as a person, not as a turntable of numbers going through the clinic. So that's really important. And thirdly, and I've said this sort of before in my first point, but the lab quality is really important. It's usually not what people think about. People often think, oh, this doctor is good, and they pick based on the doctor, but also think about the lab. The equipment that they use, the culture media, the skills of the embryologist. They have huge impacts on how well things are done. And the Monash IVF lab, it's one of the original labs, and they have really good staff working there, great skills. So that has a huge impact and is not often seen on what you see marketed. So ask about the lab and their fertilization rates and their blastocysts, so the embryo development rates. So those are really important. So I think transparency and success rates, communication and personalized care, and the lab quality.
Yeah. When you said communication, my eyes just went bing, and I thought of Yale straight away, because Yale went through how many rounds?
I did 6 failed transfers.
And she didn't get to speak to her doctor throughout that process. And it just breaks my heart that there's patients out there. And then I had to wait 3 months
to speak to that doctor after. So, there was no follow-up appointment, which I didn't understand was part of the normal process.
So I think it's just hard, as us patients, we want the communication. And like we said, we don't like to be annoying as well.
Yeah.
But I love what you said, that to be looked out for.
But also not to be a number, and to, like you said, to personalise that care to who's in front of you. I think that's so important. There's people that want that communication, the warm and fuzzy, a bit, and then there's some people that I just want the facts, figures, and I'll get out of here.
But it's still being communicated.
Yeah.
It's still being communicated,
exactly.
Which is the main thing. And your IVF Success, it's a great website, such a good tool. And I think it is a green flag when we can see the success rates on there. And we don't care if it's like maybe not the highest, not number one, but just to see it on there is nice for us patients to see. Like you said, transparency is massive. So.
Yeah, huge. Hiding it is kind of like, that's a red flag. Yeah. If you're not sharing your stats, then what's going on?
So just on that, can you explain what success rates really mean?
Yeah, this is one of the really misunderstood things about the fertility space. So when a clinic says that their success rate is X, Y, and Z, what does that actually mean? And often it is not asterisked and explained what they're actually describing. Is it the chance of a baby after an egg collection or after an embryo transfer? Or is it the chance of a baby for a person who has started a cycle? Are they including just frozen embryo transfers? Are they tested embryos because they have a better chance of working? What's the age breakdown? So a clinic that works with people who have better outcomes, okay, so, younger patients, or that may have a policy where they transfer a few embryos. That's not the gold standard anymore in Australia. But if they do that, or they do different things, like test all their embryos, then that might change the way that those numbers look. Maybe clinics turn away complex cases and then their numbers look better. Wow. So it's really nuanced.
So you're not comparing apples against apples.
Correct. And so they will always look better on paper than say a clinic that takes only low risk patients, for example. And so what matters when you're looking at a site like your IVF success, or you're comparing success rates or success, is that you want to be looking at live birth rate per intended egg collection. And you have to be looking at that per age. So you need to understand what the patient's demographic is, and does that match you? Success rates really are it's not a be all and end all. So, you don't have to be, as you said, the one with the best numbers, but it is a conversation to be had with your specialist.
That's funny that you said turning away complex cases. Does that really happen? That's so interesting.
It does in a way, yes, around the world, but certain hospitals may not be set up, for example, for looking after patients with complex medical needs, because often IVF happens in a day procedure clinic where there are no spaces for admissions, for example. And so while most people can have an egg collection and the whole IVF service through a day procedure facility, if they have significant health problems where they need to be admitted before or after a procedure, or they have a higher BMI than that hospital can accommodate, then they would have to go to a different place or a different facility. And so in places like Monash IVF, we have a few sites and we have the ability to take on higher risk patients, but there would still be some patients where it's just not the right place for that person, and they might have to go through a different centre with admitting capabilities.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It does make sense. And then obviously, they're taking on more of the higher risk, so then their stats are going to be different to
it's going to reflect
a lower
that.
risk centre, which completely makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so the next question, how can patients advocate for themselves while trusting medical advice?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't think that those two things are in conflict necessarily. I think good advocacy and trust actually go hand in hand. So the best thing for a patient is to come prepared with their questions, as I mentioned before, and not with conclusions. So questions about what they want and what they think they would like to happen and see happen, and have that conversation with the doctor. And there's a difference between saying, I read that X, Y, and Z works to improve implantation? Can you explain the evidence for my situation versus I've decided I want this and I want a referral? So one invites a conversation, a dialogue, and the other sort of shuts it down. So I really encourage people to come in with a why, and, why this protocol, why this timing, what does this mean for my case? And I think we should all, us doctors, we should all welcome that. And if you feel dismissed and unheard, that's, it's important to address that. So you're allowed to ask those questions. So you most definitely, encourage every patient to advocate for themselves, but also balance that with trusting the advice that comes back from your specialist.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good advice, because I think, like you said, in the community or online, you can hear all these things. And I think I've been there. And with my second specialist, I was able to go and say, I want to try this or I want to try that. What are your thoughts and what are the risks? What are the evidence? And then I'm getting informed information, and I would then trust their advice.
Sometimes you just want to talk it out.
Yeah.
And be heard. Like you said, you don't want to be dismissed. Yeah. Obviously, you guys are the doctors. We trust you.
What do we know?
What do we know? But sometimes we have ideas and we just want to, talk about things. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like, I trusted my doctor. Whatever Charlie said, I was happy to go with. I put my trust in him. But sometimes I did want to say, how about we try this? And he would explain to me, no, I actually think we do it this way. This might be better.
Yeah.
But he never shut it down. He never made me feel dismissed. He talked about it, explained it to me. And, then that helped us make a informed decision, which is so important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think we, you and I were guilty of it. We would see, Sally got this success off this, why don't we try that? Or this protocol worked for so-and-so, or, and we would be like tempted to, maybe I'm doing the wrong thing, or jumping on that same bandwagon. So I think at least if you can have that open communication, and then your doctor's then telling you, well, for your specific case, this isn't, recommended, then I would be like, okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I agree. So the next question, what would you say to someone feeling overwhelmed whilst navigating all of the IVF noise?
I would say that the IVF noise, is not necessarily the medicine. So your journey, or what you're going through, your plan, should not be based on like a poll or a trend or the cocktail of drugs that, X, Y, and Z person is on. So the most important thing you can do is narrow down your information sources to reliable ones and a small number of reliable ones. So ideally it should be your trusted specialist, maybe a reputable organisation, and maybe a good support community where the culture is healthy and where you give yourself permission to, feel comfortable, and you hear the good stories and maybe the bad as well, what is real, what's happening out there, but you don't feel overwhelmed by it. So it's not many communities, just one safe one. And I think then beyond that, you give yourself permission just to close off everything else. So anything that you feel is unsupportive, because as you said before, Yael, if you sometimes, certain chats can get out of control, or forums can get out of control, and almost becomes addictive to like see the next answer, see the next post, see the next question, and get deeper and deeper in this hole of information and get sidetracked. Because those questions are not all going to be related to you, and it's just breeding extra fear and anxiety about your journey. So I think at that point, just limit it to credible sources and a small group of reliable sources, and then close off the rest. And at some point, trust has to be part of the equation. So you have to be able to trust those few people or communities, and not blind trust, as you said, informed trust, but still trust.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you said support, because I think, yes, we compared and we did all of those things in the community, but what I can't speak for you, Lucy, but I feel like what I gained the most from the community was support. So there was always someone cheering us on.
Connection.
Good luck in your egg collection.
Yeah. And they always remember. Everybody remembers and supports you and are there for you when things fail.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't like, go do this or go do that. It was just cheering us on. So, yeah, I think find that is definitely what worked for us.
Do you doctors ever go have a look at the forums and the chats and see what we all speak about? I think you would be freaked out.
They don't have time for that.
I think we need a doctor to come in and be like, no, this is wrong, this is right, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Sort us all out.
No, I think I'm too afraid to see it because it's like when you post something out into, the ether and, you have pros for your what you say and then cons as well, and people against it, for and against it, and I just don't want to know what people are saying. I think I just like practice the medicine and then leave it. But support communities are really important as a patient. While you're going through something really emotional, and it sometimes helps to debrief and speak about those life events. And so it doesn't have to be that you're looking for a solution. Sometimes you're just looking to vent and have a shared experience. And I think that's really healthy. So a good, healthy support community is very important.
Yeah, I agree.
That was us. So just off the back of what we've just spoken about, how damaging can comparison be during a fertility journey?
So it can be profoundly damaging, I would say, and almost impossible to avoid. Most people, it is, I think, in our human nature to compare ourselves to others, but I think in almost aspect of life, when we compare ourselves, we're just doomed to harm ourselves. So the problem with IVF is that in communities, even in the most supportive ones, is that there can be a constant baseline for comparing yourself to others. Someone gets pregnant on their first cycle, someone else has the same diagnosis and failed 9 cycles. The biology doesn't really care about fairness, even though our brain wants to believe that it should be fair. And I've had patients who were genuinely doing well by any clinical measures, but they felt like they were failing because they were behind somebody else, or they were, achieving a pregnancy later than someone else. And why did it work for them and not me? So I think that comparing yourself against others, it's not seeking information, it's just causing suffering. So I think it's really important, and it's hard not to, but it's really important not to compare yourself to other people in this context, because it doesn't sharpen your decision making or your plans. It just affects your resilience and sort of shatters confidence, and emotional well-being is really important. It's a really important part of the fertility journey, and it affects that significantly, I think.
Yeah, I think with the comparison, it's natural and we all kind of do it. But I've never spoken about this, and I don't know if you would do the same thing, or if anybody listening can relate to this. But I would compare in a way where I would say, you don't have it that bad. That person has it worse than you. You shouldn't be sad or upset.
Yeah.
You should just keep going. You're only on this part of your journey. You should stop complaining.
Yeah.
You're lucky that it's only taking, would you do that? Or is it just me?
I would do that based on like miscarriages. Oh, well, they've had 5 and I've only had 2, and and it's not great at all. It's like you said, and it's the same for you. Like, oh, this person's done X amount of cycles, or this person's done,
their diagnosis is 100 times worse, or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Why we do that?
Humans.
Totally human nature. But I think that when you compare yourself, you're sort of not legitimizing in that situation, you're not legitimizing your own suffering and your own grief, because just because someone's situation may be harder, it doesn't invalidate your experience. So, when you go through 1 miscarriage or 2 or a failed cycle, it's still very damaging to yourself, isn't it? Like you suffer and you endure that grief. And so just because someone has it harder doesn't mean your experience is not validated.
Yeah, I love that. That's so true.
Okay, so the next question, how can people protect their mental health while staying informed? Because I think this is important.
Yeah,
because sometimes it's scary to face, but we do need to be informed. So
I think it goes back to where do you get your information from, and being able to set intentional boundaries about where you get your information, how you get your information, and your fertility content, essentially. So, as I said before, the 2 a.m. scroll is never healthy. It's never going to give you the right information, and you might not be absorbing it correctly as well at that time. So in order to protect your mental health, I think it's really important to designate specific times where you're going to maybe look up certain things. So when you are awake and alert, and then close it. So do your research, find your answer, and then close it. And if you're going to do that at home, use reputable sources, but ideally you have time and space to speak about that issue with your specialist, and seeking out a good community that you can share good outcomes and bad, and share the hope and realism, I guess, about the process. And consider working with a counsellor. So at Monash IVF, we have in-house counsellors, and they are part of the fertility process from the beginning. So they will have that initial chat with you before starting IVF or IUI, and then they're also available later through the journey, so that, you know, if you have a difficult experience, or you've had a miscarriage, or an embryo hasn't worked, it hasn't implanted, etc., that you can go back to the counsellor and have more of a discussion about that, because it is a really emotional process. We invest so much financially, physically, but also mentally and emotionally into the process, that when challenges occur or bad outcomes occur, we can really suffer. And often some people are good at talking with others, but lots of people still hold it close and don't really talk to anybody, their friends, family, about what's going on. And so it really helps to have someone like a professional who's able to chat with you, who is outside of those fears if you don't feel comfortable, that you can debrief with. So that's really important. And I guess it's also important to remember and just remind yourself regularly that staying informed is important, and it's a tool, but it's not a full-time job. Okay. It's your doctor's job, but you don't need to know everything. You need to know enough to have a good conversation with your doctor, and then just see what's going on with yourself, with your treatment plan. But you don't have to know everything. I know that when I go through the medical system as a patient, I like to find a doctor who can just tell me what to do. And I just hand over all my problems to them. I trust them. And then they will tell me and take on the burden of my plan, so that I don't have to go home thinking, I need to work out what test I need next. I just leave it in their hands. But you have to have that good relationship with your doctor, and you have to have the trust. So I think that really helps with mental health, being able to have a good doctor that you trust and having good conversations with them.
Yeah, I've never really thought about that, but just letting your doctor figure it out, handing it over to them.
I feel like,
and letting go a little bit.
You know us too well. It's not a full-time job for us.
Why do we make it a full-time job?
Yeah,
Why do we do that? We do the 2 a.m. scroll.
Yeah, we do it.
We do it all of the chat rooms.
But you're right. We both found Charlie, and we found trust in him, and just rein it over and hand it over, like you said, and that's what they're there for. You can it's like logging off at work, shut the computer, and that's it, done. Don't take it home.
I think we overthink a lot because it's not finished. The journey's not finished. So you feel like what's going to fix it? Oh my God, I need to find the solution. I need to,
It's the desperation. That's what it is. It comes from the desperation
does your head
and fear.
It does your head in overthinking. And that's the worst.
100%. Okay, should we move on to the next question?
Yes.
Okay. Have you seen patients struggle with family expectations to the point that they feel like the black sheep?
Did you feel like the black sheep? I did. Well, you're the only one in the family, right, that's struggled with fertility.
Yeah. My brother hasn't tried yet, so who knows? We could be 2 for 2. But yeah, I think you definitely fit this question.
I felt like the black sheep of the family. My family's very fertile. I have a big family. I'm one of 4. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I already am the black sheep because I'm the only one in the family that has brown eyes. So everybody has blue and green eyes. And I was like, I definitely am the black sheep. But we'll hand it over to you to answer this one.
Absolutely. I do, because and it happens more often than you think. Subconsciously or consciously, it happens because, fertility and having children, having a family, it's at the intersection of, culture and religion and I guess, family dynamics and tradition almost, where, going back, it used to be the thing, and it often came easy, when people were trying much younger. And if it didn't come easy, people didn't talk about it. And, there might be an aunt that never had children and was explained away. So often people do feel like a black sheep or that they're different from the rest of their family. And it comes with comments from family and friends, well-meaning or otherwise, why hasn't it happened? Are you trying? What's wrong? But it is really hard for the person going through it, especially if they're going through IVF, and they can also feel like the black sheep for going through IVF as well.
Yeah.
But, I've had patients whose families openly question, like why they're going to such length, or questioning their decisions, for using donor eggs or donor sperm, or trying to go it alone, as a single parent. And I would say it's really not their place, but sometimes they don't have a way of verbalizing that and communicating well with the person going through treatment. So some people, because of that, feel like they need to keep their IVF journey entirely secret, and that means carrying that burden alone often, and that isolation is its own kind of grief, because we find solace in talking to our friends, talking to our family. They're who we usually talk to about difficult situations, right, and get that support. And so when you're doing it alone because you think you're different, or the way you're addressing this problem is different to how the rest of your family would, it's really hard. And I want to remind those patients that choosing to do IVF is it's a profound act of just agency and control over your own future and love for your health. And you don't need anyone's permission, well-meaning or otherwise, or someone else's validation to pursue your own family.
I love that. Yeah, you don't need anyone's permission.
Yeah, back off, everyone.
We need
I'm
to
doing
make
it.
that a quote. I love that. That needs to go in the chat group. So I think that was so good.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us, I think, were scared to tell our family members because they don't understand IVF or fertility treatments or what it is. And you feel the shame and criticism, or
you do hear that, some people are being told, oh no, you can't do that. Why are you doing that? Why would you do IVF? You don't need to.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of us that do need to. And like you said, it's available. Like, it's the best thing on earth. Like, 48 years ago it wasn't. So
yeah, I'm proud.
Yeah,
I'm proud.
Me too.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fernando, for covering this episode with us. We haven't done an episode like this before, and I think it's good to talk about. Yeah, we have never.
There's a lot of IVF noise out there for sure. So
it's never ending. And now there's TikTok and Reddit, and it's never ending.
And now you can have a relationship with ChatGPT. So that's the scary part, I think.
The scary thing is he brings you in every time. Like, I try to end the conversation. He's like, "Would you like me to also check this for you?" And I'm like,
"Would you like me to put you in an Excel form format, and then like, how about a Word doc, and I'll, give you a pie chart
in every time.
But yeah, I think also chat can like feed you what you want to hear too. So I think that's what's scary.
That's what's scary about it. Yeah.
So yeah, I can see how it could get quite messy.
Yeah. But thank you so much, Dr. Fernando, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
I think that's a wrap on this week's episode. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Doctor. And
we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.